What if Deku was Iron Man? Now, I know I'm getting a lot into the MCU, not really, with the Spider-Man Deku and now the Iron Man Deku. And the Spider-Man Deku will be continued as a milestone. What if? So every time we hit a milestone, a new part of it will be uploaded, but probably next milestone will probably be last part. I don't really know. I'm sorry that I could not get a video out for New Year's or hell, even Christmas. It's just because I don't want to. Yeah. But anyways, what if Deku was Iron Man? Part 1. Now, I'm just going to explain one thing. I'm going to keep to the story of I'm not going to explain much, but the things I will explain will be at the beginning of the video. Now, the only thing I'm going to explain is that this is after the events of Endgame, which means Stark is unfortunately dead. So we start off this what if with the government, not Izuku. Now that Tony Stark is dead, they decided to completely scrap all of his suits to make sure they didn't fall into wrong hands. So almost all of Stark's suit, except for the original one because it's unoperational, is completely destroyed. Either that or just thrown in a mountain. And what I mean by that, I mean a lot of the suits were destroyed via volcanic eruption. Not really. I think you guys know what I mean. They got incinerated. And before you guys say, oh, it's metal, put metal against molten lava. So, we cut to Izuku being beat up by Bakugo. Damn nerd. I'm getting kinda bored of this, you know. You barely react to anything. As Izuku would laugh. Why the hell would I react if I really do not want to give you your enjoyment? As Bakugo would then stop beating up Izuku. As he would start walking away. As he would say, maybe you should just go die. Or maybe you should become a hero and die fighting and fail like your father. As Izuku would get mad at this, but he knows he can't do anything. As Bakugo would then once again start walking away. And don't worry, I'll be there to laugh at your funeral, Izuku Stark. As, yes, you heard that right, Izuku is the son of Tony Stark and Pepper, and unfortunately, Pepper is dead. After Stark died, an assassination was committed on Pepper, leaving Izuku up for adoption, and Inko adopted him. And Izuku is replacing, I don't remember her name, the daughter of Pepper and Stark. He's completely replacing her. And he was named Izuku after Tony's dead friend, as he had a friend named yeah, I guess you understand. As Izuku would then walk home, as he would walk in and just see Inko sleeping on the couch, tired from her work, as he would then walk to his room and start tinkering with something. As this would be a few years after the Endgame incident, as he would then see a broadcast on his TV next to him, just broadcasting, well, the events that are right now happening in London of Spider-Man Far From Home. And he's like, and he just would just say, they should have expected that. Mysterio, well, he's mysterious. As Izuku knows it's probably Mysterio from this, because he's the one who brought the elementals here, so he's just assuming, and he's very intelligent like his father. As he would start tinkering with something again, and he would then press a button as a hologram would appear. It was a map of Japan. And, well, this map was really pinpoint. It gave you the location of multiple businesses, multiple hero routes, and a lot of shit like that. As he would then basically just create a test video for it and would basically put it online for sale, and someone actually decided to buy it for $3,000 US dollars anyway. As this would be sent off, and Izuku would get the money, and basically he would continue doing this to help his mother. Just create things that are somewhat useful, sell them, and then, well, you know, help his mother out. So, Izuku, we are going to skip to a few weeks later. Izuku has been building a few of these little gadgets and selling them, as you'd cut to a guy in a mask that right now just broke into Izuku's window. As Izuku would wake up and look at him, as Izuku would then be knocked out, and he would wake up tied to a chair in a certain base. We then see a man with a mask, all for one, so to speak, basically capturing Izuku and basically ordering him to continue building these things for them with no charge on their end. As Izuku would agree, fearing for his life, as they would supply him with actual materials instead of the, low-grade junk that he was building things with. As he would then look at the map that he had made, seeing that they're using it to plan out where to ambush certain heroes from. So Izuku would start building and building and building, creating things. As All for One would walk to Izuku one day while he's basically building an improved map. And would basically say, I know you have something planned. You and your father are always the same. So here's a little gift. As he would pull a pin on a grenade and put it right on Izuku's chest. As he'd then put a barrier around Izuku and it would blow up. He would then attach a car battery to Izuku's chest to keep him alive. But as soon as he becomes irrelevant to them, Izuku's dead. So Izuku was trying to figure out a way to keep himself alive longer. And he would think to his father. He had an arc reactor in his chest. As he would start building a stable arc reactor secretly. And when All for One found out about this, he was kind of mad, but he won't do anything because he needs Izuku. As Izuku would basically build an arc reactor, as Izuku would continue to tinker with something, as we then cut to a scene of Izuku finishing his small little project. Izuku takes a lot of inspiration from his father. And with that, he practically recreated the Mark I suit. It's a lot more compact and slim, but it still is kind of bulky and doesn't really work that well. As he would then burst through the wall that he was being kept in, and basically heavily injured all the villains. As basically Izuku would escape, blowing up the building, just blowing a lot of it up, blowing all the technology he has built, as a bunch of heroes would come around and see Izuku, and most of them would be in awe, as Izuku would then immediately fly off back towards his house, and none of the heroes could catch him. As he would then get home, and the suit would basically collapse, and he would get out of it, and basically just hide it somewhere in his garage. As he would walk back in, and Inko would be shocked to see him. It's been a month or two since Inko last saw him. And now here's a little side note. You might be wondering why I'm just correctly copying Stark's original story. It's because Izuku isn't really, well, this story is, I want it to have Izuku as a variation of Iron Man, not be an original Iron Man himself, taking inspiration from his father, and eventually taking up a heavy mantle that is the one of Iron Man. That's the story I'm going for. Not to make Izuku create the character of Iron Man, but have to live up to the mantle of Iron Man. That's what I'm going for. That's also why I had almost all the suits except for the original Mark I scrapped, as Stark Industries, as you can guess, is also shut down, but the building is still there, just being renovated. As basically Inko would explain to Izuku that they're taking a vacation to New York. As then on the next day, they would basically be on a plane, and when they got to New York, a broadcast would start. This would be the broadcast of Mysterio attempting to reveal the identity of Peter Parker and attempting to frame Peter Parker. As Izuku, being incredibly smart, would see the downfall of this being a very bad thing for whoever the hell Peter Parker is. So he'd basically do a little thing on his laptop and hack into the screen. Jonathan also didn't see the identity of Peter Parker, or the quote-unquote identity, because of a lot of things, because he was watching it with everyone, and the broadcast just cut short, as it would then cut to a new broadcast. Basically, it's during the line of Peter telling Edith to execute all the attack drones protocol, as the broadcast would, without anyone saying anything, reveal the audio distortion and see that these two things are cut together. As this just cleared Parker's name immediately. And yes, that does mean this No Way Home will not happen. Now, this is for two reasons. One, I don't want the multiversal shenanigans at the moment. And two, I've not actually watched No Way Home. I just know a few things like the Andrew, Toby, and Tom Holland parts. I've seen a few of the scenes. I've seen the trailer, but I have not watched the movie yet. And I don't want this to be a story about Spider-Man. As the broadcast would cut short, as two initials would show, IZ or IS. No one knew what this means, but it cut short, and Iko, while riding in the car, would look back at Izuku and say, "You're too smart for your own good, kid. I mean, you don't want this place to be in a whole-out war zone while we're here, do you?" As they would drive by the place where Parker is watching the screen, as Edith is integrated into his suit by now, as it would say, person detected, as Parker would look to the car driving by. Detected. Izuku Stark. As he would open his eyes and be shocked. A Stark. I. Oh. As there would be something else. Be something Tony told Peter. If he ever encountered his son, Izuku, tell him that he's sorry. As he would start swinging after the car, and when they parked, Spider-Man would land. Basically, just asking a question. Izuku Stark, am I right? And you must be Peter Parker. As Spider-Man would basically have the same shock he did, just not screaming it. How do you know that? I mean, I hacked the screen. I had to see the original clip to, completely erase it. As Izuku would as this would immediately activate Edith, as basically a hologram would appear in front of Spider-Man, basically being directed towards Izuku, basically giving Izuku a coordinates left for him. And you're gonna be asking, the fuck? Why am I doing this? This makes no sense. It's not meant to make sense. It's meant to be a story. As Izuku would be somewhat confused, but understand that this is probably some secret place. And Izuku would look at his mother and would basically say, I've got something to do. As Izuku would basically he just click a button and basically a small little as a bunch of nanotech would kind of appear around him. A bunch of very much not that advanced nanotech, as much to create maybe some sort of rocket engine that would allow him to fly, sort of. As he would boost off towards the location, as Peter would just follow him, or Spider-Man would just follow him. As they'd get to this abandoned-looking building, as it would then immediately power on and a secret door would open, both Izuku and Peter entering to be a secret lab with the Stark logo in the corner. As then they see the Iron Man Mark 1 suit, as a bunch of materials would basically be all over the place, as Izuku would be like, so this is where he created the Mark 2. As Tony didn't create his Mark 2 in his private estate, he created it in a very secretive place, because in this AU, Tony was a bit more secretive about his identity, and his identity never got revealed until, well, Infinity War. That's what I'm gonna say. They just knew Tony as someone who helped fund the Avengers. That's what I'm gonna say of why this place is secretive. Now, this would start the friendship between Izuku and Peter. As, well, Izuku would basically say goodbye to Spider-Man, as Izuku would head off back to Inko by just walking, because he can't use the... I'm sorry, I said nanotech. I meant to say just he pushed a button and this trunk popped. I don't know what I was thinking. As he can't use the rocket, so he just put it in a bag and started leaving. As Izuku would basically... He he decided to open that bank account his father left him, as it would have a shitload of money. As him and Inko decided to just buy a house, as they didn't really plan to go to Japan anytime soon. As they basically, Tony's estate was basically put up for sale, as they basically bought that, and Izuku would basically be enrolled in a school, with his name being showed as Izuku Midoriya, not Stark, because, you know, he don't want to do the bullshit. As Izuku would be introduced to the class, and a bunch of things would go pretty much the same. As basically he would basically just introduce himself as Izuku Midoriya. Peter, obviously knowing who he actually is, and it would basically just be pretty much a normal school life for Izuku and Peter doing Spider-Man things. Let's see, what should I do now? The shit comes off the top of my head, so it's kind of hard to think of what comes next on the top of my head. So we'd skip to about a month after Izuku started school and actually got to New York. Him and Peter are pretty much friends, and he's also friends with Ned and MJ. But that's just that. We would basically skip to where a reporter would basically bring up the clip from a few months ago of this Iron Man clone blowing up this facility in Japan, as Peter would basically just slowly turn his head to Izuku. I mean, what? I was kidnapped and held against my will to build weapons and technology. As almost everyone knows the story of Stark and how he was held against his will to build weapons, and he would say, "You really are just a clone of Stark, aren't you?" Yeah, probably. As Izuku would basically walk out of the school building, and they were watching this on their phone, as he would get in a Lamborghini and head the fuck home. Yes, I said Lamborghini. As when he get home, something was off. There was a break-in, as he would walk in and see All For One standing over his mother's dead body. As All For One would then look back at Izuku and say, "I'll slowly break you for what you did." As All For One would then teleport away, as Izuku is furious. As he is incredibly mad. As he would then head to his father's secret facility and start building something. A new Iron Man suit. He would immediately start rebuilding the nanotech, and he would create the suit you see on screen. As it had more features than the original one. Is this the Mark 85? I don't know. I just grabbed a random picture. But I guess for Tony, this would be the Mark 85, and for Izuku, this is literally his Mark II. As it has stealth integrations, it's got sound isolation, it doesn't sound like clanking metal, and it's also one of the most advanced suits he would ever create, for now. As Izuku would then immediately put on the suit and activate the stealth features, making him turn invisible with technology, as he would start flying off back to Japan at basically the speed of sound, and get back to All for One. As Izuku would basically just blow up this other base, as he'd come face to face with All for One. As All for One would say, "You're finally here." Wait, so you really did recreate it? I have to say I'm impressed. Izuku, as he would be cut off, as Izuku would have his hand in his fist, his gut, basically punching the shit out of All for One. As basically a battle would ensue, as a bunch of pro heroes would be ensued, and they'd all notice the suit. As Izuku would basically have beaten All for One with technology, and he would then power his hand repulsor. As he would fire, and it kills All for One. A bunch of the heroes then surround him, but Izuku just vanishes, and he just flies up at Mach speed. Or at the speed of sound, like I said. As this was broadcasted as a lot of people in New York were seeing this, and they were shocked to see someone else with that suit. As Izuku would get home, and basically the suit would just, just leave his body, as he'd put up the wetsuit looking thing up in his closet, as he would basically call, he would basically get a funeral set up for his mother. As we'd skip to a few months when it actually started, and Izuku is kind of broken from this, as he has no one now. Not his father, not his mother, not even the woman who adopted him, who he saw as his mother. As basically, Izuku would, after this, be sitting on top of a building, basically just thinking as Spider-Man would land next to him. "What do you want, Parker? I know that was you in the All-for-One attack. Why? He's the man who killed my mother, you could say." Look, I understand how it feels to lose someone. I lost my uncle, and that was due to my own mistakes. I know it wasn't your mistake that she died. But do you really think she'd want you to hurt other people just because you lost her? Look, your father and I were good friends. I mean, I would hope so. And he was kind of like the father figure to me, also. But one thing he never truly wanted to do was completely kill villains. That doesn't mean he hasn't killed in the past. He completely annihilated an entire army with the snap of his finger. But he wouldn't want you to become a bad person. If anything, he'd want you to become the person you want to be, but not someone who just meaningly hurts people, even if you truly have a reason to. Look, kid, or, well, Izuku, I'm not good with these, little pep talk speeches. I never have been. But you don't need to kill people to put them to justice. I'm never saying killing isn't always off the table. I know eventually I'm going to have to kill someone. Not everyone can be just left alive. And even if All For One was one of those people, you should take him as an example. And if you truly just want villains to suffer, they suffer worse when they're in prison, not dead. As he would basically continue this little pep talk as, yes, I had to write that entire pep talk. That was the only scripted part of this damn video. Because, well, I'm not good with those little pep talk speeches, so I'm gonna put my blame off to Parker of him not being good at them. As Izuku would basically realize something from this, and would basically, you think, Parker, as he would leave and head back to his home, which he now lives alone. As he would basically go to his server room and reactivate Jarvis. Hello, who are you? Izuku Stark. You can check my credentials and any identification you need. As he would basically just reactivate Jarvis, and that will be the end of part 1. Now, I know this should probably be called part 0, as this is practically his origin and not the actual story, but All For One is already dead, so I'm going to call this a part 1. This is Izuku's origin, or this version of Izuku's origin. Growing up with practically no one, and the person who actually did, take care of him would be dead. I think I also should exclaim that Izuku is quirkless in this, and the only reason he beat All For One is because, well, his suit is not a quirk. But I think this will be the end of part 1 of What If Izuku was Iron Man.